those whose pregnancy was denied. What's your story? I never thought I'd be the kind of woman writing something like this, but here I am. I'm in my late 40s now, my daughter is 25, and after everything that's happened recently, I feel like I need to put this somewhere people will understand. This is long, it's messy, but it's my truth. 26 years ago, I was in love. I know people on Reddit roll their eyes at that sentence, but it's true. We had been together for a few years. Not perfect, but real, or at least I thought it was. We talked about the future casually. Marriage one day, kids. Someday. The usual promises. That feels solid until they're suddenly not. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified, but also happy. I remember sitting on the edge of the bathtub staring at the test. My hands shaking so badly I dropped it twice. I cried, laughed, then cried again. I didn't think it would be easy, but I thought we'd face it together. I told him that same evening. He didn't smile. He didn't hug me. He just stared at me like I'd told him someone died. His first words were, "You need to get rid of it." Not "we need to talk." Not "let's figure this out." Just that. I laughed at first because I thought he was joking. When I realized he wasn't, my chest felt like it caved in. He said it wasn't the right time. That a baby would ruin everything. That we were too young. That it wasn't what he signed up for. Then he said something I've never forgotten. "I'm not ready to be a father, and I'm not going to be forced into it." I told him I wasn't aborting my child. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I just said it calmly. I remember being surprised by my own certainty. That's when he changed. He told me if I kept the baby, I'd be doing it alone. He said he wouldn't support me financially or emotionally. He accused me of trapping him. He said I was selfish for wanting to keep a mistake. That word still hurts. A week later, he stopped answering my calls. Another week passed, and I got a call not from him, but from a lawyer. I genuinely thought it was a joke. It wasn't. He had already met with a lawyer and started the process to sign away his parental rights. No custody, no visitation, no child support, nothing. The lawyer explained it like he was reading a grocery list. I remember asking, does he even want to talk to me? The lawyer paused and said, he feels this is the cleanest solution. Clean. Like my child was a stain. I signed the papers a few weeks later. Not because I wanted to, but because fighting him felt pointless. You can't force someone to love a child they already resent. When my daughter was born, I didn't tell him. I named her myself. The first few years were hell. I won't romanticize it. I was broke, exhausted, scared all the time. There were nights I cried silently while holding her because I didn't want her to feel how close I was to breaking. I worked to whatever jobs I could find, missed meals so she could eat, learned how to survive on very little. He never showed up. No birthday cards, no phone calls, no curiosity about the human being he helped create. For years, I told myself it didn't matter, that we were better off without him. Most days, that was true, but sometimes, especially when she was sick, or when I saw other kids with their dads, it hurt more than I want to admit. She asked about him once when she was little. Why don't I have a dad like everyone else? I told her the truth in the gentlest way I could, that some people walk away. And it's not the child's fault. She accepted it with a maturity that broke my heart. What I didn't know then was that this wasn't the end of his involvement. It was just a pause. 25 years later, after my daughter built a life from nothing, after she bought me a house, after she created a successful company, after she became everything he said she never would, he came back. Not to apologize, not to reconnect, but to take. I didn't recognize him at first. That sounds dramatic, but it's true. When you haven't seen someone in over 2 decades, your brain doesn't immediately connect the face to the memories. He was standing at the gate of the house my daughter bought for me, the house I still sometimes wake up in shock, actually own, wearing a suit that looked expensive but slightly outdated, like he'd bought it to impress people who no longer mattered. I thought he was a salesman. One wish I were joking. When he said my name, my stomach dropped so fast I actually felt dizzy. His voice was older, rougher, but unmistakable. I hadn't heard it in 25 years, yet my body reacted before my mind caught up. I didn't invite him in. What do you want? I asked. He smiled like we were old friends who'd just lost touch. That smile alone told me everything. I needed to know this wasn't a visit driven by guilt or regret. I heard our daughter is doing very well, he said. Our. That single word made my hands curl into fists. She's doing fine, I replied. You need to leave. He laughed, like I was being dramatic. Come on, don't be like that. We should talk. Against my better judgment, I let him sit on the porch. Not inside. Never inside. Some boundaries become sacred after years of survival. That's when he told me about his life. He was married, 2 sons, a stable family. He said it with pride, like he wanted applause. He talked about private schools, sports, how expensive raising boys was these days. Not once did he ask how I had managed alone. Not once did he ask what our daughter was like as a person. He got to the point quickly. She bought you this house, right? I didn't answer. He nodded to himself. I thought so. I did some digging. That's when the pit in my stomach turned into something darker. She owes me, he said casually. At least indirectly. I laughed. I genuinely thought he was joking. She owes you what? I asked. For starters, that house should have been mine, he said. If things had gone differently, I would have been the one providing. I missed out on that. I stared at him, trying to understand how a human being could twist reality so thoroughly. You signed away your parental rights, I reminded him. You chose not to be her father. He waved his hand like I was nitpicking details. That was a long time ago. People change. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, you don't get to show up now and rewrite history. That's when he dropped the real reason he was there. My sons deserve something, he said. They're her brothers, after all. I stood up. They are strangers, I said, and you need to leave. He didn't. A week later, my daughter told me he'd contacted her directly. She showed me the messages. At first, he played the role of the remorseful father, said he regretted the past, said he'd been young and scared, said he wanted to reconnect. She replied once, just once. She told him she wasn't interested in a relationship, but wished him well. That should have been the end. It wasn't. That's when the tone changed. He started talking about fairness, about blood, about family responsibility. He said she had more than enough and didn't need everything she'd built. You're getting married soon, he wrote. You won't even need all that money. That line made my daughter cry. Not because of the money, but because of what it revealed. To him, her success wasn't the result of years of sacrifice. It was excess, something to be redistributed. Then came the demand. He wanted her to give him a portion of her company. Not a loan, not a gift, ownership. He said his sons deserved it more because they were younger and needed a head start. My daughter refused. Calmly, clearly, respectfully. That's when he threatened legal action. I still remember the night she told me. We were sitting at the kitchen table. The same table where I once helped her with homework by candlelight when the power was out. He says he's going to sue us, she said. On what grounds? I asked. She swallowed. That I owe him. That I wouldn't exist without him. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid of losing, but because I was furious. He hadn't paid a single hospital bill, hadn't bought a single diaper, hadn't shown up for a single parent-teacher meeting. And now, because she succeeded despite him, he felt entitled to the rewards. When the court papers arrived, it felt surreal. He was officially suing us for emotional damages, moral obligation, and a share in her company. Reading those words made something inside me snap. I had spent 25 years being strong, quietly, without applause. I wasn't quiet anymore. We hired a lawyer the next day, and that's when things got ugly. The first thing our lawyer told us was this: he doesn't have a case, but that doesn't mean he can't hurt you in the process. I didn't fully understand what she meant until the smear campaign started. Within days of filing the lawsuit, he suddenly became very loud about his lost daughter, people from his side of the family, people who had never once reached out to me or my child, started posting online about how tragic it was that a man had been kept from his child. That narrative made me physically sick. Kept. As if he hadn't walked away with a pen in his hand and a lawyer by his side. My daughter tried to stay offline, but screenshots still found their way to her. Comments about forgiveness, about how money changes people, about how she should do the right thing. The right thing, apparently, was giving her life's work to a man who once asked her mother to erase her. Our lawyer advised us to document everything, every message, every post, every contradiction. Because once it went to court, the truth wouldn't care about his feelings. The first hearing was procedural, but seeing him across the courtroom was still jarring. He looked confident to confident, like someone who genuinely believed the system would reward him for audacity. When it was his turn to speak, he painted himself as a victim of circumstance. He said he'd been pressured into signing away his rights, that he'd been young and scared, that he'd always wondered about his daughter. I wanted to stand up and scream. Instead, I sat there while our lawyer slid the original documents across the table, documents he'd signed willingly, with legal counsel, with no objections, no conditions, no coercion. Then came the messages. The judge read the words where he demanded an abortion, where he threatened to disappear, where he'd stated clearly that he wanted no responsibility now or ever. His face went pale. That was the moment I knew he hadn't expected us to be prepared. He had expected guilt to do the work for him. The worst part wasn't what he said about me. It was what he said about my daughter. He described her success like it was luck, like it had fallen into her lap. He argued that she hadn't earned it alone because everyone is shaped by their parents. I almost laughed, because if that were true, she would have been shaped by absence. My daughter testified the following week. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She simply told the truth, that she grew up without him, that she never received financial or emotional support, that her success came from years of discipline, sacrifice, and resilience, much of it learned from watching her mother survive. When his lawyer asked her why she wouldn't help her half-brothers, she replied, because they are not my responsibility. Their parents are. The courtroom went silent. After that, his story started unraveling. He contradicted himself under oath, claimed he tried to reach out earlier then couldn't provide proof, claimed he didn't understand what signing away his rights meant despite being represented by counsel. Our lawyer didn't need to be aggressive. The facts were enough. Still, the process dragged on for weeks, and those weeks were brutal. My daughter stopped sleeping. I caught her staring at nothing, jaw clenched, like she was bracing for impact that never came. One night, she asked me something I'll never forget. Did he ever love me at all? I pulled her into my arms like I used to when she was small. His failure to love you has nothing to do with your worth, I told her. It's about his limits. Court doesn't just test facts, it tests people. And by the final hearing, he looked smaller, tired, desperate. That's when he made his last mistake. By the time we reached the final hearing, everyone in that courtroom was exhausted. Weeks of delays, repeated arguments, the same recycled claims dressed up as something new. You could feel the judge's patience thinning every time. His lawyer stood up to speak. That morning, my daughter squeezed my hand before we went in. No matter what happens, she said quietly, "Thank you for never giving up on me." I nodded, because if I tried to speak, I would have cried. His lawyer opened with what was clearly their last strategy, emotion. He talked about regret, about lost time, about how a father's mistake at 20 shouldn't cost him forever. He painted my ex as a man haunted by his choices, now trying to do right not by showing up, but by being included. Included. As if parenthood were a club you could rejoin once the benefits became obvious. Then my ex took the stand. And that's when everything fell apart. He looked straight at the judge and said, "I'm not asking for much. Just what's fair?" The judge leaned forward. "Define fair." He swallowed. "My daughter has more than she needs. She's getting married soon. She won't even use all of it. My sons are younger. They need opportunities." The judge paused, then asked the question that ended him. "Sir, where were you when your daughter needed opportunities?" Silence. He shifted in his seat, mumbled something about being young, about not being ready. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "You made a legally binding decision to relinquish your parental rights," he said. "That decision protected you from responsibility. It also forfeited your privileges." That word privileges felt like oxygen rushing back into my lungs. His lawyer tried one last time. "What about moral obligation?" The judge shook his head. "The court enforces law, not regret." I will never forget that sentence. Then came the ruling. Case dismissed. No claim, no share, no standing. The judge made it very clear my daughter owed him nothing financially, morally, or otherwise. He didn't look at us as he left. I think that hurt him more than the loss. Outside the courthouse, my daughter let out a shaky breath and laughed a sound that was half relief, half disbelief. "It's over," she said. And for the first time in months, I believed it. But closure didn't come all at once. It came later that night when we sat in the living room of the house she bought me, drinking tea like we always do. "He didn't win," she said, "but he didn't take anything from us either." She was right. He didn't take our peace. He didn't take our future. And he certainly didn't take what we built together. One part left. The part where we moved forward. After the ruling, something strange happened. Nothing. No dramatic confrontation. No apology text. No final outburst. He simply disappeared again, this time for good. And oddly enough, that silence felt like the most honest thing he'd ever given us. People who had been very loud online also went quiet. The same relatives who talked about forgiveness and family first suddenly had nothing to say. When the court made it clear that entitlement isn't a substitute for parenthood, no one apologized, but I didn't expect them to. Silence was enough. My daughter slept for almost 12 hours the first night it was truly over. When she woke up, she looked lighter, like she'd been carrying a weight she didn't realize had a name until it was gone. A few weeks later, she got married. It wasn't extravagant, despite what people assume about wealthy women. It was intimate, thoughtful, full of people who had actually shown up in her life. I watched her walk down the aisle, confident and calm, and I thought about the night I held her as a newborn. Terrified I wouldn't be enough, but I was.